Agut Voch Rabboisai, or Agut Nerv Shabbos Rabboisai, wherever you are in the world. Live from Park City, Utah. Rabboisai, here we go. We're holding on Daf Hey Amud Beis. What do we have yesterday? We had Pasuk Beis. It says the word Mina Bakar. The Gemara asks, why do we have to say it again? Mina Bakar and Pasuk Gimel. Says the Gemara comes to teach us a chiddush, that if an animal has a treifa, it's one of these things that the animal won't get to live according to most shitas for more than 12 months. It has a punctured lung, a hole in the heart, different things. The spine is severed. Won't survive. An animal like that, you're not permitted to bring as a carbon in the Beis HaMikdash. Ask the Gemara, why do I need a pasuk? And that's the whole sugya today, back and forth. I need the pasuk because I can't learn from a Kal V'chomer. But I have a Kal V'chomer. Why not? What's the Kal V'chomer? Kal V'chomer is, I can learn it's very, very simple, this Kal V'chomer. If an animal that has a blemish, which you're allowed to eat on Shabbos, you're allowed to eat on the weekday, but you're not allowed to put it on the Mizbeach, so certainly this guy right over here that has a hole in his stomach, which you're not allowed to eat an animal that has a treifa, so certainly you shouldn't be able to put it on the Mizbeach. The guy on the right, you're allowed to eat privately. The guy on the left, you're not allowed to. So on the Mizbeach, the guy on the left, the treifa certainly should be also. Love it. Then the Gemara said, what's the lashon? Because I looked it up. I can't find it here. My shafta. Ime shafta. I could not find it anywhere in Chas. I looked it up today, I couldn't find it. Maybe you'll find it. Maybe it's spelled differently. The Nakuda is, what if I have a good answer on your Kal V'chomer? So then I need a pasuk. But what's the good answer? So we're going to bring all these, we're going to try to bring a good answer. We're going to knock it down. The bottom line, I have a Kal V'chomer, so I need a pasuk. At the end, the Gemara says here, that's why I need a pasuk, because the Kal V'chomer is no good. So the Gemara says, Mar Bereder Ravina Amar, you know what could be a pircha to your Kal V'chomer? What are you telling me? You're saying, logically speaking, if something is usher for a private person to eat, it certainly should be usher for Hashem, so to speak. How can you bring this animal to the Beis HaMikdash when you yourself can't eat it at your Shabbos table? You can't eat it at your barbecue. It's a treifa. We know that they check for holes in the heart. They won't sell it. They'll sell it to a guy. So how can you bring it to the Mizbeach? Wait a minute. I have a few things here the Gemara brings. Shabbos. Something you're permitted to do for the Mizbeach, you're not allowed to do it privately. You're not allowed to shecht an animal on Shabbos. You're allowed to shecht an animal on Shabbos for the Beis HaMikdash, for the Mizbeach. The Tamid, twice a day, the Musaf. Says the Gemara. So Mela, I would say a treifa also. It might be also for a private person to eat, but it's mutar on the Mizbeach. Who told you? Don't bring me a right from Shabbos, because Shabbos, the whole idea of not being Michal Shabbos, once in a while you're allowed to be Michal Shabbos. Like I was a sandik at my son's, my grandson's bris. My son had a son, or my daughter-in-law had a son, in Miami 3 weeks ago, mamish less than 3 weeks ago, on Shabbos, the Michal Shabbos. So Shabbos goes away. So don't bring a right from Shabbos. Says Gemara, what do you mean Shabbos, Michal Shabbos, for Mila? Mila is not a private thing. Mila mitzvah. Mila is a mitzvah. Hashem commanded it. It's not. You're not benefiting anything from the Mila. We had a Givaldic guy here yesterday. I don't even know his name. Was his name Zupnik? Or maybe I'm confusing with somebody else. But he became Baal Tshuva when he was 43 years old, and he described that he had to have a bris Mila then. At 43, he had to get a bris. Part of the shir. I'll tell you. The reason you can't bring a raya from Shabbos is because that's how we do the mitzvah. There's no other way to do it. But bringing a carbon, I could do it without bringing a treifa. I could bring a good, healthy animal. I don't need to bring a treifa. But on Shabbos, I have to shecht an animal to get a carbon tamid. Let me prove it from shatnez. What's shatnez? Putting semer upishtim yachtav, flax and wool together. You're not allowed to weave them together. So here, it's geshmak, he's weaving them together. He takes the wool, makes a thread of it, and then he takes the two threads and puts them together. That what? You're not allowed to wear shatnez. In fact, if somebody comes over to you in the middle of the Beis Medrash and tells you that your pants are shatnez, you have to remove your pants in front of the whole Beis Medrash. There's no kavod abris when it comes to shatnez. But in the Beis Hamikdash, they use shatnez where the gartel, the avneit of the kohen gadol, the belt of the kohen. No, once in a while, shatnez is mutter even for an individual. Where? Tzitzis. You could wear a flax beged and put on wool tzitzis on the corners, and that's mamish shatnez. And it's mutter. So the Gemara, the same thing we said by a bris milah, do tzitzis tzarech too. You're doing it for yourself. Mitzvah. The Torah command you to wear tzitzis. Elo, top of Vav and Aleph, Malik Laim Shem Tzvasa B'kach. This bell, that's the way to do the mitzvah. I can't bring a raya from it. Rav Shisha Berei the Ravidi Omar, the reason why I need a pasuk to tell us that a treifa is also on the mizbech, and I can't learn that of a kavachomer from a balmum. This was something, me personally, when I was a child, it caused me trauma. This ma'atzad, but it's so simple. In fact, if you do it in a chart, it's just like, wow. We have three things here. Actually, it's two things. We're going to go in a circle. It's like a catch-22. We're trying to prove that something that's usher to an individual should be mutter or usher for the mizbeach. So Gemara says, let's learn from Malika. That what? Malika, when I kill a bird in the Beis Hamikdash with my thumb, with my nail, so it's also for the individual, it's mutter for the mizbeach. Oh, so what are we going to say? No, but the reason why it's not a good raya is because over there it's something special that as the kohen kills it, he makes it mutter to the mizbeach, and at the same time it comes aser. Something special. So I'll bring a raya, and these are two things that we learned yesterday. Let me bring a raya from blood. Blood is also to the individual, but mutter to the mizbeach here. So maybe a treif also mutter to the individual, also to the mizbeach, or fakir also to the individual, mutter to the mizbeach. No, but blood comes from something that's mutter. The whole animal is mutter, whereas the treifa, the whole animal is a treifa. No, but what about malika? So now I'm going to pull out malika. So the combination of these two things, I can learn one thing. I'm going to learn that there is a concept where something is also for the individual, mutter for the mizbeach. 3 lines from the top. That's the top thing in this chart. That's the 3 o'clock on this chart. But you can't bring a raya because the whole body of the animal is mutter. The whole bird is also. The Chazarah din goes in a big circle. Each one has its own chisaron, but they have one common denominator. What's the common denominator? An individual is also to eat something that had malika, and it's also for him to eat blood. But yet they're both mutter to the mizbeach, and so too a treifa. And memela what? Memela I can't learn a kavachomer, and that's why I need a pasuk to say the treifa is also. You just have to hold cup. When am I knocking the kavachomer? And if I'm knocking the kavachomer, I need a pasuk. Or when am I saying I have a good kavachomer? Why do I need a pasuk? Says the Gemara, take a look at the chart. All these things. Oh no, this is the tzad shava. It's red. It's also to the individual. It's mutter to the. Says the Gemara, no, but all of these things, the malika, that's the only way to do it. The Torah said that's the way you do it. Dam chaylev, that's the way you sprinkle the blood on my mizbeach. You give Hashem to eat, so to speak, from the blood. The mela, I take the kolchkin treif and I flip it on its head, as in this chart. El Amar Ravashi, Mishum the Ika Lemeimar Mikor the Dina Pircha. Again, we're going back. Why do I need a pasuk that says mina bakar? Not this, sorry, not this one. I'm trying to get to this one. We don't need to see it, but it's going to play in the background. Why do I need a pasuk when I have a kavachomer that tells me that a treifa should not be allowed on a mizbeach? Because if a balmum, a blemished animal, is not allowed on the mizbeach, certainly a treifa. Says, I'll tell you why. Let's stop it now. You got it. Your whole kavachomer is from a blemished animal. A beautiful svar that we didn't have in a very long time. It's that the kohen and the animal are equals. The animal cannot be a balmum, and the kohen performing the avodah cannot be a balmum. Both of them. But a treifa is different. A treifa, don't bring me any right from a treifa, because the treifa itself can't be a balmum. But the kohen performing the avodah could be a balmum. There's no issur for a kohen that has a hole in his heart to perform the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. Only Rav Achasova. The Rav Ashi, an animal born with a Caesarean will prove it to us. Together with the Balmum. We'll do like a Ma'at Tzad. We'll take the two of them in combination. Each one has a problem you can't learn individually, but the two of them together, they'll help each other out. Each one that has the problem, well, the other one doesn't have the problem. But the other one has this problem, but the first one doesn't have that problem. Boom, together, we can learn out. That what? You're telling me that's such a big milo that a balmum, kayin, and an animal both are similar in a treifa not. But guess what? A yaitze doifen, an animal that was born with a Caesarean is also to go on the mizbeach. But what about a kayin? What about a kayin? Let me ask you, a kayin who's born with a Caesarean, can he perform the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash? So let me prove from a yaitze doifen that what? That a yaitze doifen, the kayin is mutter to do the avodah, but the carbon not. You didn't make the kayin. The kayin is kosher. He's the makriv guy. He's kosher. Like the animal that you're putting on his mizbeach, which is not kosher if it's a yaitze doifen. You can't bring a Caesarean-born animal on a mizbeach. You're allowed to eat a barbecue made out of a Caesarean animal, but it's also on the mizbeach. You know what? A firstborn animal has gedusha, but not if it was born with Caesarean. Oh, so you see a weakness in it. No, I'll prove a balmum that what? A balmum could be a bechor, even though it has a blemish. But it's also the mizbeach. Mal balmum, she can also buy makrim kikravim. But a balmum, the kohen, if he's a balmum, he can't do it. He can't do that way. Then if the animal is a balmum, he can't be put on the mizbeach. You're to dive in. The kids were going again in a circle. I didn't have time to put it in. Yoshi wasn't feeling well today. We didn't put it in. But you get the circle. It just keeps on going in a circle, catch 22, so to speak. The Chazarah din. And it keeps on going in a circle. Each one has its own minus. But they have one common denominator. That an individual can make a barbecue out of it. And it's also on the mizbeach. Now, once again, we have our Kavachomer back that a treifa should certainly, since it's also for an individual, it certainly should be also for the mizbeach. So, what's the question? If so, why do I need the pasuk mina bakar? Says the Gemara, the reason I need the pasuk, since treifa is different. Treifa is different than a yaitze doifen and all these things. There's a case where a treifa is mutter to eat, but the other ones don't have. A balmum is never mutter on the mizbeach. What's the case? That by a treifa, how do you have a treifa? One time it's mutter to eat. How? When the kohen takes his thumb with the nail and cracks or severs the spine of the bird, that makes the bird a treifa. Then he continues pushing forward and he severs the kan and the vesha, the trachea and the esophagus. And that's how you kill the bird. But before you kill them, before you cut the simanim, the trachea and the esophagus are called simanim, before you did that, you created a treifa here and you're allowed to eat it. Forget the eating. You're allowed to put it on the mizbeach. For now, we don't know about eating yet. We know about mizbeach. What's the case exactly? You're telling me that you did malika and you're allowed to put it on the mizbeach, What kind of raya is it? A balmum also you could put on the mizbeach when it's balmum. There's a concept. There's no zachrus in a bird. In other words, you cannot differentiate physically, and it doesn't really matter either way. You could bring a female or a male. Another thing is there's no tamus. There's no such thing as a bird that has a blemish. There is something called that a bird is missing a wing, a bird is missing a full limb, like a leg. That's a problem. But just a blemish is not a problem. Cataract, all these blemishes is not a problem. Oh, says Gemara, but the point is that there's a treifa where you could eat. What is the treifa you could eat? There's two types of birds we bring in the Beis HaMikdash: an oila and a chatas. Oila, the entire bird goes on the mizbech, kulei l'Hashem. The whole thing goes for Hashem. But a chatas, just like an animal chatas, you get to eat part of it. The kohen gets to eat it. The bird also, the kohen gets to eat it. But it's a treifa. The kohen went like this with his finger. He made it a treifa. So you see, there's one case of a treifa that's huta miklala, and that's why you can't learn treifa from everything else. Says Gemara, but wait a minute, the kohen is eating right off the mizbeach. In other words, the fact that the kohen could eat, it's not the pshat that Hashem allowed him to eat. Hashem took it for the mizbeach. Now, once it's ready for the mizbeach can eat this treifa. Now the kohen gets to eat from it. It's different. It's a different way of looking at it. Vela parachachi. Finally, again, let's wrap it all up in this the end of the sugya. I'm telling you, the end of the sugya. Why does the Torah have to say mina bakar to tell me that you cannot bring an animal that has a hole in the heart as a carbon? I can learn it from logic. The Gemara says you cannot learn it from logic. Why? Well, you're going to learn from a balmum, someone that has a blemish. Look at this bird over here. He's all banged up. You could see that he has blemishes. But a treifa, we know. Anybody that ever went to a shlachtois, you have to open up the chicken, you have to open up the cow, you have to look at the lung. You blow it up, they blow up lungs, and then they say, oh, look, there's a sircha over here, there's a white dot here. It's not something that you notice most of the time. And Mamela cannot learn out a treifa from a balmum. Lusugya, utreva machanafka. You're telling me that you learn treifa from this pasuk, min ha-bakar. Let's see the pasuk again for the 15th time. Tavas nisht. This is the pasuk that you're learning treifa from. They have other ones. Mazam nafkim emashki Yisrael. This is the yisai that we learned yesterday. That do not bring a carbon to HaKadosh Baruch Hu from something that a yid can't drink from. It has to be mashki Yisrael. It has to be roy to eat. Minamutal Yisrael. And another second pasuk. Because we know that when you have 10 animals, the 10th one goes to Meiser. But do not include, you let them out of the pen, 1, 2, the 10th one, you hit it with the red dye. Didn't show it today because we have a lot of other stuff. But if one of them is a treifa, has a hole in the heart, he's not part of the 10. Part of the treifa, Sheni. So, you see that you can't bring a treifa on him mizbeach. Says the Gemara, I need all three psukim. I need min ha-bakar, I need mashki Yisrael, I need tachas ha-shevet. Our thing is dafka when the animal is born like this, but a treva dumi the arlo klaya kerem. Arlo means the first 3 years of a tree, you're not allowed to benefit. You're not allowed to sell it, use it for any purpose at all. You must let it rot. That's arlo. Klaya kerem is if you have a vineyard with grapes, you're not allowed to sow, you're not allowed to plant. Midaraisa, according to everybody, it's wheat, but according to most Tanaim, it's also other vegetables as well. And believe it or not, the Gemara learns this from this pasuk, Memashki Yisrael pasuk. In other words, Klei Kerem and Arla they were born bad. They never had a shasakosh. They didn't have a moment that they were mutter. Whereas a treifa, he can be a normal animal, and all of a sudden a nail goes into his stomach, and then becomes a treifa. But if it was good, maybe it should be kosher. That's why I need the second pasuk. Now, if I had these two psukim, because it makes a difference if it became treifa, and then you made it ekdish, it's no good. Do me the meiser. That's like a meiser. It's treif, and then you try to make a meiser, no good. But if you made it kaddish first, and then only afterwards it became treifa, At the moment that you made it hegdish, it was roi to be hegdish, but nothing wrong with it. I would think that it is kosher. That's what the Torah says. Min abakar, the third pasuk, to tell me that a treif is also to go on the mizbeach tzrichi. Says the Heilige Mishnah. Echad michas choyte ve'echad kol menachos shekmatzim zar. A Yisrael cannot perform the kmitza. Interesting thing. Now, when it comes, we said that a mincha corresponds, the 4 avodas of a mincha correspond to the 4 avodas of shechting in an animal. You have kmitza, you have putting it in a kli, you have oilacha, and you have putting it on the mizbeach. So too, when you shecht an animal, you have shchita, kabbalah, oilacha, zrika. But guess what? Shchita could be done by Yisrael. By a mincha, cannot be done by a Yisrael. But what's interesting in this Mishnah, pay attention because the Gemara is going to ask it right away, so I just want to point it out here. From all the Menachos, and there's many Menachos, the Mishnah picks one, Minchas Chayta, the Mincha of a sinner. Let's say somebody walked in the Beis HaMikdash when he's Tamei. Why? Just start the Mishnah. All the Menachos that Yisrael did the Kmitza. I'm going to show you what a Kmitza is in a second. Or, somebody whose parents or relative died that day, before the burial, they can't do any mitzvahs. If he performed the kmitza, bye-bye. Tful Yoim is a person who is tamei and went to the mikvah that day. We'll show you real quickly, because we're in a rush. What's some gishmagi stuff? Bunch of rats eating pizzuchim. One of them chokes to death. So the mouse is dead, so it made the person tamei. So this person has to go to the mikvah, goes to the mikvah, and becomes a tful yoim. In other words, he has to wait until nightfall, until it becomes completely tahar. Now he's red, but he dumps into the water, he becomes purple. If the kohen is not wearing the begadim that he's supposed to wear, the clothing that a kohen wears, if he's a kohen gadol, it's 8 clothing, if he's a kohen hadi, it's 4. Mechusar Kippurim, if he's in this state of purple. No, let's do this, yeah, sorry. So a person is tamei. He's red. He goes to the mikvah, toivel, now he's purple. Now he's a tful yoim. But if he's a zava yoledes, he has to wait until the following day to become completely tar. It's not enough for shkia. Here, the nightfall comes, he's still blue. Now, once he gives the shape, he turns green. He has to bring a carbon. Once he brings the carbon, he's completely tar. A kohen who did not wash his hands and feet, he cannot perform the kmitza. Ariel, he's a Jew. Let's say his brothers died during the bris milah, so he didn't do one. So he did one on it. So he's Ariel. He doesn't have bris. He cannot do kmitza. Tamei, he's tamei. Yoshev, he's sitting down. He's standing on top of any kind of device. He's not standing directly on the floor of the Beis HaMikdash. He cannot perform or standing on an animal, agabe behema, he's on an animal. He has to be directly on the floor. Agabe ragel chaver, standing on his friend's feet, which are like his feet. It's min b'minoi. No, it's chaytz, it's possible. Comments b'smile. He performed the kmitz instead of with his right hand, he did it with his left hand. Possible. Ben B'Seir says, let's say you did it with your left hand. Just take everything. Here, I have a bunch of flour. Take it, put it back into the bucket. And then you start over again. And then you do it with your right hand. He did kmitza with his right hand. But inside the kmitza, he found a stone. So it's not a full kmitza. It has to be 3 fingers with. Or a piece of a grain of salt, or a piece of frankincense. Possible. It's possible. Why? Why is it possible? If you make too much kmitza or too little, possible. What's too much and what's too little? Let me demonstrate, please. You see this part on top of my hand? That's mevayrats. That's no good. That makes it possible. Don't say, oh, it's more. No. With your thumb, you got to go like this. Got to knock it down. Okay? And with your pinky, you go like this. Now it's nice and almost even. Gevaldik. Now, the chazar. What's chazar? What does it mean too little? And that's the problem that we have now, because you have a stone in there. It's too little. Notice how my fingers go to the bottom of my palm. See that? Rosh Hashanah would be like this. Your fingers are bent all the way up to each other, and you have that little amount. That's no good. It has to be all the way down to your palm, like that. That's the amount. Says the Gemara, why are you telling me I'm picking one out of all the menachos, the mincha of the sinner? Why? Listen, just start from all the menachos, because it applies to all the menachos. You can't have a Yisrael doing kmitza, and you cannot have a Einan doing kmitza, and all the other things in the Mishnah. Says Gemara, it's really halacha for Reb Shimon bar Yochai. In fact, this is what Mendy Auerbach was tying, and we probably got it from here. Why shouldn't the sinner's mincha require oil and levina? Why? Because we don't want somebody who sinned to benefit. Oh, because you're a sinner, you don't have to spend extra money on the frankincense and on the it doesn't make sense. And this Rabbi Isai, I realized that this Reb Shimon bar Yochai who loves explaining the Pnimius HaTorah. That's what we started the Masechta with. Reb Shimon Dorish time in the Kral. I hope Rashi doesn't say it, because then I'll be a big Amar. No, he doesn't say it. Good. And why, in fact, does the Chayte not have to spend extra money? You should make him spend extra money. He sinned. Because I don't want his carbon to be a beautiful carbon. I want it to be a shvach carbon to show, hey, you sinned. You're not bringing a fancy thing here. And let's continue. The same thing should apply to a carbon, not a mincha. A carbon, you bring an animal, because you sin, let's say Michal Shabbos by mistake. You should bring the wine that goes together with it, the libation. Why don't you have to bring the wine? I don't want him to bring a fancy carbon. So and the Gemara fears lies. Reb Shimon is the one that says that I don't want him to have a nice carbon. He can't sleep psulim. So if a zar or a oinen or all these psulim people, kasher should be kosher. Why? Because it shows that it's a weak carbon. Yisrael does it. Who cares? Mashma, no, it's a shvacha carbon. There's no oil. There's no levina. But no Yisrael. Yisrael cannot perform the kmitza. Zok the Gemara, Ihachi, Hasam Nami Lisne. So whatever we just said in our Mishnah, we know Mesachtes Zevachim mimics Menachos mimics Zevachim. Say the same exact thing in Mesachtes Zevachim. Hasam Nami Lisne. Yachol Chatas Chaylev Echad Chaz Zevachim. We should bring the Chatos as an example. And you're going to ask me why to say that it goes according to Reb Shimon. I need it for Reb Shimon. What do you see? How come it's not in Mesachtes Zevachim? Since it says the word kol, which includes all the karbanos, it doesn't say besides. It includes all. And since it says by us all, it includes every single mincha in the world. The question remains: so why in the world do we highlight minchas chayte? Says the Gemara, it's the first Mishnah of Mesachtes Zevachim we already established doesn't go like Reb Shimon bar Yochai. The what? The first Mishnah says that if you bring a mincha and the Kohen thought the wrong thought, and thought instead of thinking that it's a minchas marcheshes, he thought it's a minchas machvas or whatever he thought. The owner that brought the carbon has to bring another one. Reb Shimon bar Yochai says he doesn't. So I would think that the second Mishnah also doesn't go like Reb Shimon bar Yochai, because the first one doesn't go like Reb Shimon bar Yochai. The last one doesn't go like Reb Shimon bar Yochai. So Kamash one goes like Reb Shimon bar Yochai. Rabbi say brand new sugi. Omarav nu alacha zar shekametz yachzer. Individual Yisrael zar shekametz yachzer. If a Yisrael does kmitza and it's no good, put it back into the pot. What's the problem? Ask the Gemara, what do you mean? What's the problem? Vanan pasal tnan. It says in our mission that's pasal. Says Gemara, no, you misunderstood. My pasal achzer. Yeah, it's pasal until he puts it back in the pot. If he puts it back in the pot, it's kosher. So then, what in the world does Ben Beseira add? There's no machlokes between the Tanakh and Ben Beseira. The exact same thing. Put it back in the pot and continue by it. That's what Ben Beseira says. Put it in the pot. If the Tanakh says put it back in the pot, then he didn't say different. So the Gemara, this is the claims by Eli Ben Beseira. If you see it and it's in his hand, tell him to put it back in. The problem is it got lost. You play the Chazarah claims. Oh, Rabbi Isai, can an individual go to his house and fill it up? Rabbanan hold that you need the kedusha of the kli to make it a mincha. You can't just go home and grab some flour from your house. So here's the machlokes. You ask me what's the machlokes between Tanakam and Beseira? Very simple. If the kmitza got lost, a dog ate it. So can you refill it from your house? As the Gemara, but the words in the Mishnah don't seem like it. Why? Because it should say, go to your house, or go to the Beseira, go home and bring flour. It doesn't say that. What it should say is, go home. That's what it should say. Says Gemara, Rav was not talking in Chachamim at all. Rav was only talking about the Shita of Ben Beseira. Says Gemara, if so, Shita, what is he saying? Rav says that if a Yisrael does kmitza with his left hand, he should put it back in the bowl and restart. That's what Ben Beseira says. So why did Rav have to say it? If he's going in Ben Beseira, then he didn't add anything. Well, the same Ben Beseira el b'smol. Rav is going to Mechadash that the whole list of the Mishnah, the Oinen, and the Mechusei Kippurim, Tvul Yoim, all these things that we said that are puzzle, that also you can put back in the bowl and to restart. I would think that Ben Beseira was just talking about the left hand versus the other stuff. I only have 2.5 minutes. Let's see what we can do in 2.5 minutes. Maish and small. Why is the left hand different? When the Kohen Gadol can't hold all the stuff together and he has to also hold on to the Ketores on Yom Kippur, he's allowed to use his left hand. So you see there's an exception to the rule on the left. So to Yisrael, you see an exception that he could do Shchita. So the Gemara Shchita lav avodah. As we said yesterday, Shchita is not considered one of the 4 avodas. And now the Gemara is going to debate that. Shchita is para, bezor psula. When you have a para aduma, a Yisrael cannot perform the Shchita. Why can't the Yisrael perform the Shchita? Because it's considered an avodah. And Rav explains, because it says, we know, everybody knows, every kid in Cheder knows that it says by paraduma, zois chukas ha-Torah. This is exactly the way it is. We don't understand it. Sometimes you don't understand. It's a chayk. So since the Torah said it should be like that, that's it. You can't do it any differently. Shani para the kachi b'dekabayisi. I'm going to tell you that a para aduma is kachi b'dekabayis. Now, there's 2 things. There's something called kachi mizbeach, which is a very high level of kedusha. Like when I take an animal, I say this should be an oila. So it has the high kedusha of kachi mizbeach. Something lower level. I donated an animal to the Beis Hamikdash, the upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash. They could sell it, they could do whatever they want with it. A para aduma is in the lower category, kachi b'dekabayis. Says the Gemara, wait a minute, it makes no sense what you just said. You need a kain because it's in a lower category for carrot. If it was in the higher category, you need a kain. What you're telling me is that even in the lower category, you need a kain, certainly in the higher category. Isn't there a kavachaymer? If you need a kain for the lower category, certainly you should need it in that. And we're going to have to stop in 40 seconds. When a kain looks at saras, you don't need it's not considered an avodah, but you definitely need a kain. As the Gemara of an Elif Mebama, why can't we learn from a Bama that what? That even a Yisrael is allowed to perform the avodah on a Bama in a backyard mizbeach. But you can't learn maybe from a Bama to the Beis Hamikdash. But we learn the famous, I'm not going to show it now, but the famous Imala L'Yered video. How do you know that there's certain things that once they go on the Mizbeach, they don't have to come off, even though it's also to put on, but they don't come off? And we learn from the Obama. Says Gemara, no. We learn it from a pasuk, but we just use the Bama as an asmachtara boisai. Have a wonderful day.
Merit the schus of spreading Torah throughout the world. Sponsor a shir today. MDYsponsor.com or sponsor at MDYDaf.com.